Morning people, welcome back to F Politics. Calling Jewish people idiots for opposing the genocide that Israel is committing in Palestine right now is a wild place for us to be, but apparently our media and politicians have chosen to respond to the worst anti-Semitic attack in a generation in the UK with yet more anti-Semitism. As you may have heard, Labour is effectively banning the weekly protests for Palestine by putting a ban on repeated protests.
There will be protests that relate to the conflict in the Middle East that would now come into the purview of these changes.
Now listen to what this Jewish man says and then listen to the response from the Conservative mayor of Tees Valley.
The implication behind their argument is that these are hate marches. They are not. I have, as a Jewish person, I've received nothing but love and respect on these marches, and I've been attending every week for 2 years.
Ben, there is a Jewish man for whom it has been important over the last year to come every week and say, I want to object to what is happening in the conflict between Israel and Gaza. As a conservative, do you not agree that he has that right?
I think some of the examples you just gave that are an example of the useful idiots that we've seen who are supporting hateful marches.
That Conservative mayor was asked a direct question about the fact that many Jewish people oppose the Israeli government's actions in Gaza and have been marching against them every single week, and his response was to call them useful idiots. So their response to Jewish people who believe that mass murder is wrong is to call them idiots. And then there's the Jewish leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, who said,
I think it's really problematic if someone is trying to weaponize the attack that happened yesterday to try and silence protest in this country against the genocide. And speaking as a member of the Jewish community, I wouldn't want anyone to feel like they had to be silent about a genocide that's happening because of an outrageous, atrocious attack that happened on our soil too. These are separate things and we should condemn them all. Democratic, non-violent protest is a cornerstone of our democracy. And I think it's worrying when government are increasingly trying to crush down dissent and again using what is a brutal attack that many of us in the Jewish community, in fact all of us in the Jewish community, are feeling very deeply, to try and use that to point at a protest and say people don't have a right to also speak out against the genocide is both conflating issues, it's incoherent, and it's exactly the opposite of what we need from politicians.
To which Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's response was,
well, firstly, I don't think it's offensive to ask people to show a little humanity towards a community that has suffered such a terrible tragedy.
What the Home Secretary just said was insane for a number of reasons. One, she's arguing that showing compassion for the 2 people who were killed in Manchester means you can't show compassion for the 80,000 people who've been killed in Gaza. 2, it's ludicrous to argue on the basis of compassion and respect for human life when you're complicit in what the United Nations is now calling a genocide. 3, it's a small point, but it's worth mentioning that one of the people that was killed in Manchester was actually shot by the police, and the police are agents of the state, and Shabana Mahmood, you are the state. So telling other people to be compassionate and respectful for the loss of human life when your government isn't just complicit in the acts of genocide in Gaza, but is also ultimately responsible for one of the deaths in Manchester is wild. And finally, yet again, it's disregarding the voices of Jewish people who oppose you on this issue, and doing so with a very condescending approach. Which leads me to what Sky News' Trevor Phillips said about David Lammy being heckled at the vigil for the victims in Manchester.
That reaction was really about what that group would see as the failure to stop the weekly demonstrations, particularly in the centre of London. It was about the decision to recognise Palestine. It was about the sense that pretty much every other minority gets its say, but Jews, as the phrase now goes, don't count.
Now first off, this narrative around anti-Semitism that the Palestine marchers have been allowed to become this hotbed of extremism and hate. They've been arresting literally hundreds of people at the Palestine marches, even before they prescribed Palestine action. Memorable examples include the people who drew pictures of paragliders supposedly in support of Hamas. Or remember that teacher who got arrested for drawing pictures of Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman as coconuts. Now if and when there are people at any march who incite racial hatred against Jewish people, it is the responsibility of the government to arrest them. But banning marches that oppose genocide, supposedly on the basis of showing solidarity with Jewish people, implies that all Jewish people support the genocide, which only paints a target on the backs of Jewish people. And the narrative that it's only Jewish people who are being allowed to be intimidated by mass demonstrations. Sorry, Tommy Robinson led the Unite the Kingdom march just a couple of weeks ago. The Labour government allowed a march to be organised by the former head of the EDL, a convicted criminal and clear racist. So it wasn't wasn't just a couple of wrong-uns in the crowd who crossed the line into extremism, they effectively had Elon Musk on stage telling people to fight the left with violence, allowing Tommy Robinson to organize the Raise the Colors campaign, which is why we're seeing flags everywhere. Like, we've had ethnic minorities scared to leave their homes because of this stuff. Where was your compassion for us? It's almost as if they're weaponizing the fear that minority groups feel, but only how and when it suits them. Like how Trevor Phillips talks about the idea of Jews don't count, but as you effectively just heard from the Conservative mayor and the Labour Home Secretary, Jewish voices only count if they support the Israeli government. And just so that you know I'm not exaggerating, let's peel the mask off this thing and show you Stephen Yaxley Lennon, or Tommy Robinson as he likes to go by, who was recently invited to Israel by the Israeli government.
The elitist Jews, the woke, liberal elitist Jews, the ones like the border deputies who are pro-open borders, they don't represent all Jews, okay? Netanyahu and his government are conservative. They're not woke, they're not liberal, they're not open borders, they're conservatives, okay? I've been invited by the conservative government. So of course you're going to see the woke, liberal Jews getting upset with their hugging up and cozying up to Islam and open border mass immigration. They're the reason all these problems are happening. Many of them. And they're upset because the real Zionist Jews, who are strong conservatives, not weak, pathetic liberals, are the ones that have invited me.
So altogether we have Labour, the Conservatives and Tommy Robinson, so the centre-right, the right and the far-right, all disregarding the voices of Jewish people who oppose genocide, while pushing the narrative, just like the Reform Party is doing, that anybody who opposes the Israeli government's genocide must hate Jewish people. So the response from our media and politicians to an attack by an anti-Semite on a Jewish person, presumably on the mistaken belief that all Jewish people are somehow inherently tied to the Israeli government's actions, is to say that anybody who attacks the Israeli government's actions is also attacking Jewish people. They are fueling the very anti-Semitism that they claim to be trying to stop. I'm Femi. Make sure you follow F Politics so politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.